past few years, the damage has gotten out of control.
They're very destructive. If I looked at it on average, I could lose up to 10% of my grain crops.
Imagine waking up to find your entire paycheck for the month shredded, trampled, and eaten. That's Tuesday for a farmer dealing with wild hogs. We aren't talking about cute little farm pigs here. We're talking about 400-pound tanks with bad attitudes and tusks that can open a leg like a zipper. They move like ghosts in the dark and eat like they're being paid for it. If farmers don't fight back, they don't eat. It's that simple. The shadow in the corn. You haven't seen a mess until you've seen a cornfield after a sounder of wild hogs has spent the night partying in it. To most people, a pig is just a pig. Maybe you think of the pink guy from the movies or the bacon on your breakfast plate. But to a farmer, a wild boar is a 300-pound wrecking ball with a snout. They don't just eat the corn, they destroy the whole plant just to get to one ear. They root up the soil, creating deep wallows that can snap the axle of a tractor like a dry twig. It's personal. When a farmer looks out over a field they've spent months sweating over, only to see it looking like a bomb went off, frustrated, doesn't even begin to cover it. The real problem is that these things are smart, scary smart. They aren't like deer that just stand there in the headlights like they're waiting for a bus. Boars learn your patterns. They know the sound of your truck engine. They know when you're sleeping and when you're gone for the weekend. They've become the ultimate agricultural ninja, slipping through fences that would stop a bull and disappearing into the brush the second they sense a human within a mile. This isn't just a nuisance, it's a direct hit to the bank account. For some guys, a bad hog problem can mean the difference between breaking even and losing the farm entirely. It's a weird feeling, standing at the edge of a field at dusk. You know they're out there. You can smell that musky, sour scent of vealed hog on the breeze, but you can't see a thing. They wait until the sun is long gone, tucked away in the thickest, nastiest briars where no person would ever want to go. Then, like clockwork, they emerge. They move with this weird, heavy grace, a line of black shadows cutting through the stalks. Every bite they take is money out of a kid's college fund or the mortgage payment. Farmers have tried everything: better fences, loud noises, even chemical deterrents. Nothing works for long because these hogs adapt faster than we do. They're built for one thing: survival. And right now, their survival is coming at the expense of the American farmer. You can't just ask them to leave. You have to make them leave. And that usually involves a lot of gunpowder and very little sleep. But before you can stop them, you have to understand exactly what kind of monster you're dealing with. Bioweapon with tusks. If you were going to design a creature specifically to ruin a farmer's life and survive in the toughest conditions on Earth, you'd end up with a wild boar. They are essentially the tanks of the animal kingdom. We're talking about a creature that is built like a solid block of muscle, wrapped in a hide that's as tough as an old radial tire. A mature boar has what they call a shield, a thick layer of cartilage and scar tissue over the ribs that can be 2 inches thick. This isn't just for show. It's literal armor designed to protect them during fights with other boars. When you're hunting them, that shield is a nightmare because it can stop a small caliber bullet or a dull blade right in its tracks. It's the first thing you learn. If you don't have enough knockdown power, you're just going to make him mad. And trust me, you do not want a 400-pound boar with a grudge coming at you. Then you've got the tusks. These aren't just teeth. They are self-sharpening biological daggers. The top and bottom tusks rub together every time the hog opens and closes its mouth, honing the edges to a razor-sharp finish. They use these to root for tubers, but they also use them as weapons. A quick upward flick of a boar's head can rip through denim, skin, and muscle all the way down to the bone in a split second. They don't have to be big to be dangerous, but when they get huge, they become genuinely terrifying. Their neck muscles are so powerful they can flip heavy logs or stones like they're made of styrofoam. They are built low to the ground, giving them a center of gravity that makes them incredibly hard to knock over once they get a head of steam. It's not just their physical build that makes them a bioweapon, though. It's their internal engine. A pig's nose is one of the most advanced sensors in nature. They can smell food or you from miles away. They can detect a single acorn buried a foot underground or a hunter who didn't wash his clothes with scent-free soap from 3 ridges over. Their sense of hearing is just as sharp. You might think you're being quiet, but to a hog, your boots crunching on dry leaves sounds like a freight train. Their only real weakness is their eyesight, which isn't great, but they more than make up for it with sheer instinct. If something feels wrong, they vanish. But the real weapon part of their biology is how fast they multiply. This is where the math gets scary for farmers. A sow can start breeding before she's even a year old, and she can have 2 litters a year with 6 to 10 piglets in each. If you do the math, you realize that if you don't kill about 70% of the population every single year, the numbers will still go up. It's a biological explosion that we're trying to put out with a garden hose. They can eat almost anything: roots, crops, fawns, eggs, and even carrion. They are the ultimate survivors, capable of living through freezing winters and blistering summers without missing a beat. They are hardy, smart, and incredibly fertile. When you combine all that with a lack of natural predators in most areas, you realize we aren't just dealing with an animal. We're dealing with a force of nature that is designed to take over the world, one cornfield at a time. And all that biological power translates into one massive, soul-crushing bill for the people growing our food. The economic massacre. When people talk about the hog problem, they usually focus on the cool hunting gear or the size of the tusks. But for the guy driving the tractor, it's all about the bottom line. We aren't just talking about a few missing ears of corn here. We are talking about a full-scale economic massacre. In the United States alone, wild hogs cause an estimated $2.5 billion in damages every single year.
It's estimated about 6 million feral pigs are roaming America, causing an estimated $1.5 billion in damages. Just this week, a group of senators introduced legislation aimed at eradicating the destructive animals.
Let that number sink in for a second. That's not oops money. That's bankrupting the family farm money. It's like having a silent thief in your house who doesn't just steal your TV, but also rips up your carpet, smashes your plumbing, and burns down your garage on the way out. The damage starts long before the crops are even tall enough to see. These hogs have a sixth sense for when seeds hit the soil. A farmer will spend thousands of dollars on high-tech seed, fertilizer, and diesel to plant a field, only for a sounder of hogs to come through that night and vacuum up every single seed by following the planter rows. They can strip a 40-acre field in a few hours. That farmer then has to decide, do I spend the money to replant and hope they don't come back? Or do I just take the loss? It's a gamble where the house, or in this case the hog, always has the advantage. As the crops grow, the damage just gets weirder and more expensive. Hogs love to wallow. They find a low spot in the field, tear it up, and soak it with water to stay cool. This creates massive mud holes and ruts. Later in the season, when a farmer is cruising along in a $500,000 combine harvester at 2 in the morning, they hit one of those hidden hog wallows. Bam! The header is trashed, the axle is bent, and the harvest grinds to a halt for 3 days while they wait for parts. That's thousands of dollars in repairs, and even more in lost time when the weather is closing in. It's not just about the crops either. These animals are walking petri dishes. They carry dozens of diseases like swine brucellosis and pseudorabies. If a wild hog gets into a commercial pig farm, it can infect the entire herd, leading to a total cull. We're talking about the potential for billions more in losses if a major outbreak happens. They also tear up fences that cost a fortune to maintain and pollute water sources that livestock depend on. Every time a farmer has to fix a fence or treat a sick cow because of a hog, that's money coming straight out of their pocket. It's a relentless drain on resources. This is why farmers are so willing to open their gates to hunters. They aren't looking for a trophy. They're looking for a lifeline. Gear of the trade. If you show up to a hog fight with a pea shooter and a cheap flashlight, you're basically just ringing the dinner bell for the boars. This isn't your grandpa's Sunday afternoon deer hunt. Dealing with wild hogs, especially the Hogzilla variety, requires a specialized toolkit that looks more like something out of a tactical manual than a sporting goods catalog. Because these animals are smart, tough, and mostly active when the sun is down, the gear has to be top tier. If your equipment fails at 2 a.m., when a 400-pounder is charging out of the brush, you're in for a very bad night. First, let's talk about the eyes. Since boars are the kings of the night, hunters have had to adapt. The game changer in the last decade has been thermal imaging. Traditional night vision is cool, but it relies on ambient light. Thermal, on the other hand, detects heat signatures. Through a thermal scope, a hog standing in a pitch-black tree line glows like a neon sign against the cold ground. It's expensive, sometimes costing more than the rifle itself, but it's the only way to effectively thin out a sounder before they vanish into the shadows. Without it, you're just shooting at noises in the dark, which is a great way to miss, or worse, hit something you didn't intend to. Then there's the boom. You need a caliber that can punch through that thick cartilaginous shoulder shield we talked about. A lot of guys swear by the .308 Winchester or the .30-06, rounds with enough kinetic energy to drop a big boar in its tracks. In recent years, the .300 Blackout has become a favorite for hog hunters using AR-style platforms. It's powerful, it cycles fast for follow-up shots on multiple targets, and it works incredibly well with a suppressor. Speaking of suppressors, they aren't just for looking cool. A suppressed rifle helps keep the rest of the sounder from scattering quite as fast, and it saves the hunter's hearing during a long night of shooting. It's about efficiency, not just firepower. We also can't forget the low-tech gear that's been around for centuries, the dogs. In some parts of the country, hog dogs are the gold standard. You have bay dogs that track the hog and keep it cornered by barking their heads off. And then you have the catch dogs, usually something like a pit bull or an American bulldog, that wear Kevlar vests and literally jump on the hog to hold it in place until the hunter arrives.
Barling dogs is probably the most dangerous type of hunting, in my opinion. When you got big lugging dogs that just tie down both ears, you can run in pretty well safely. If your dog lets go, you do run the risk.
It's raw, it's intense, and it requires a specific kind of gear for the dogs, including GPS tracking collars. If a dog gets lost in a swamp or a thicket, that GPS is the only thing bringing them home. Finally, there's the transport. You can't exactly haul a 450-pound mud-covered beast out of a swamp in the back of a Prius. Most serious hog hunters rely on built-out ATVs or side-by-sides equipped with winches and heavy-duty racks. You need a way to get into the muck where the hogs live, and a way to get the carcass out once the job is done. Add in some scent-masking sprays, sturdy boots that can handle ankle-deep mud, and a reliable knife that can hold an edge against that sandpaper-thick hide. And you're starting to get the picture. This gear isn't just about the thrill of the hunt. It's the professional equipment needed to manage a biological crisis. Having the best gear is only half the battle. You still have to step out into the pitch-black silence and face them. The Midnight Patrol. There is a specific kind of silence that only exists in a rural field at 2 o'clock in the morning. It's not a peaceful silence, it's heavy. You're sitting on the edge of a tailgate or creeping along a tree line, and every sense you have is dialed up to 11. Your coffee has gone cold, your eyes are straining, and the only sound is the rhythmic hum of crickets. This is the Midnight Patrol. For a farmer or a hired hog hunter, this isn't a hobby, it's a shift. You're a night watchman guarding a buffet line that stretches for hundreds of acres. The hunt usually starts with a slow crawl in a truck or a side-by-side, driving without lights. You rely on the stars and your memory of the terrain keep from sliding into a ditch. Every few hundred yards, you stop, kill the engine, and lift the thermal monocular to your eye. The world turns into a grayscale map of heat. At first, You see nothing but the lingering warmth of rocks and the occasional white pulse of a rabbit hopping through the weeds. But then you see it. On the far edge of the peanut field, a cluster of glowing white blobs emerges from the timber. The adrenaline hits you like a shot of pure caffeine. Your heart starts thumping against your ribs, but you have to stay calm. If you slam a door or crunch a dry branch now, the game is over before it starts. You step out of the vehicle and begin the stalk. This is the hardest part. You have to move against the wind, keeping the breeze in your face so your scent doesn't drift toward those hypersensitive snouts. You're walking through high grass, praying you don't step on a fallen branch or into a hole that'll snap your ankle. With every step, you check the thermal. The blobs are getting bigger. You can start to see the shapes of individual animals, a big sow in the lead, a dozen smaller shoats following her, and then, trailing behind like a heavy-duty freight train, the big boar. He's massive. Even through the digital screen, you can see the power in his shoulders. He's not just eating, he's destroying. He's rooting deep into the soil, tossing clods of dirt aside like they weigh nothing. You get within 100 yards, then 80. You set up your tripod, resting the rifle into the cradle. This is where the simple part of the hunt gets complicated. If you just take one shot and kill one hog, the rest of the sounder will scatter like mercury, and they'll be twice as hard to catch tomorrow night. The goal here is total removal. You wait, you breathe. You wait for the hogs to line up, or for the big boar to offer a clear broadside shot. The moment you pull the trigger, the world explodes. The muzzle flash momentarily blinds you, and the crack of the rifle shatters the midnight quiet. Through the scope, you see the big boar drop, but the rest of the field is suddenly a chaotic blur of white heat. Hogs are bolting in every direction, some toward the woods, some, weirdly enough, right toward you in their confusion. You're working the bolt or the trigger as fast as you can, accurately aim, trying to stop as many as possible before they hit the safety of the brush. When the dust settles and the echoes die down, the silence returns. But it's different now. It's a heavy, ringing silence. You walk out into the field, your boots sinking into the freshly turned mud. Finding a downed boar in the dark is its own challenge. Even a dead one looks like a dark mound of earth until you're right on top of it. When you finally reach him, the scale of the animal hits you. He's covered in coarse, wire-like hair and caked in the very mud he was using to ruin the field. His tusks are stained with plant juice and earth. You realize that while you won this specific round, there are probably 5 more sounders just like this one within a 3-mile radius. You check your watch. 3:30 a.m. You load the heavy carcass, wipe the sweat from your forehead, and head to the next field. The patrol isn't over until the sun comes up. As intense as the shooting is, sometimes the most effective way to win a war is to let the enemy walk right into a trap. Traps and tech. If hunting is the infantry part of the war on hogs, then trapping is the intelligence wing. Let's be honest. As much fun as it is to sit out in a field with a high-powered rifle, you can't be everywhere at once. A human hunter gets tired, gets cold, and has to go to work in the morning. A trap, however, doesn't sleep. It doesn't get bored, and it doesn't care if the wind shifts and blows its scent toward the woods. For a farmer who is losing thousands of dollars a night, a well-placed trap is often the most efficient way to put a dent in the population.
Well, experts say the feral hog costs farmers billions of dollars in damages every year, and data shows they're continuing to spread in the Commonwealth.
But we aren't talking about those old-school wooden crates your granddad used. Modern hog trapping has gone high-tech. The gold standard today is the cellular gate trap. Imagine a massive circular pen, maybe 20 or 30 feet across, made of heavy-duty steel livestock panels. There's no top, but the walls are high enough that even a panicked boar can't leap out. The secret sauce is the gate. It's held up by a magnetic trigger or a hydraulic pin, and it's connected to a camera and a cellular link. The farmer sits in his living room, miles away, watching a live video feed on his smartphone. He watches the hogs trickle in, lured by the scent of fermented corn or hog candy. He doesn't drop the gate for the first pig or the second. He waits. He waits until the entire sounder, the sows, the piglets, and the big boars, is inside the circle. Then, with a single tap on his phone screen, the gate slams shut. This whole sounder removal is the only way to actually win. If you shoot one hog, the rest learn that humans plus noise equals death. They become educated, making them nearly impossible to catch later. But with a remote trap, they never see it coming. They just think they found a free lunch until the steel hits the dirt. It's a clean, efficient way to relocate an entire family of pests to the great cornfield in the sky. Of course, getting them into the trap is an art form. You have to condition them. For a week or two, you leave the gate locked open. You put the bait out every night, letting them get comfortable. You want them to feel like the trap is the safest place on the farm. Once the camera shows that the big boss boar is finally feeling brave enough to step inside, that's when you go live. It's a game of patience that would drive most people crazy. But for a farmer, the sight of 20 trapped hogs on a Tuesday morning is better than a winning lottery ticket. It's about more than just the kill. It's about the peace of mind that comes with knowing that specific group of destroyers won't be back to ruin next week's harvest. Even when you have them cornered, there's a bigger conversation happening about how we treat these animals. The ethics of the hunt. Whenever you talk about killing on this kind of scale, things can get a little heavy. Even though we're talking about an invasive species that's tearing up the countryside, there's still a human element to consider. Most hunters and farmers aren't out there because they enjoy causing pain. In fact, most of the guys I know have a deep respect for the wild boar. You have to respect something that's that tough and that determined to survive. The goal isn't cruelty, it's management. But because these animals are so destructive, the rules of the hunt look a lot different than they do for something like a white-tailed deer. The biggest ethical hurdle is the invasive label. Because wild hogs aren't native to North America, they don't have a season. In most states, you can hunt them 365 days a year, day or night, with almost any weapon. For some people, this feels like cheating or overkill. They see the thermal scopes and the high-tech traps and think it takes the sport out of it. But if you talk to a farmer, they'll tell you that this isn't a sport, it's pest control. You wouldn't call a plumber unsporting for using a high-tech camera to find a leak in your pipes, right? It's the same thing here. We are trying to protect a food supply, not win a trophy. That being said, a quick kill is still the golden rule. No matter how much damage a boar has done to a cornfield, nobody wants to see an animal suffer. This is why using the right caliber and having the skill to place a shot correctly is so important. A wounded hog is not only an ethical failure, it's a dangerous one. A 300-pound boar with a broken shoulder and a bad attitude is the most dangerous thing in the woods. There's also the debate about what happens after the hunt. Some people think it's a waste and to leave the carcasses in the field, while others argue that the sheer volume of hogs makes it impossible to process them all. It's a balancing act between being a responsible steward of the land and dealing with a biological tidal wave that never stops coming. At the end of the day, the ethics of hog hunting come down to one thing: doing what's necessary to keep the ecosystem and the farm in balance while still treating the animal with the gravity it deserves. And once the smoke clears, the question remains, what do you do with all that meat? From field to fork. After the adrenaline of the hunt fades, you're left with a lot of work and a few 100 pounds of organic, free-range protein. This is where the story shifts from pest control to the ultimate BBQ. Now, there is a big misconception out there that wild hog meat is gamey, tough, or just plain gross. People think since they live in the mud and eat whatever they find, they must taste like a swamp. But if you talk to anyone who knows their way around a smoker, they'll tell you that a wild hog, especially a younger shoat or a sow, is some of the best meat you'll ever put on a plate. It's leaner than the pink, fatty pork you buy at the grocery store, and it has a depth of flavor that makes a store-bought pork chop taste like wet cardboard. The key is in the processing. You can't just treat a wild boar like a domestic pig. Because they are constantly moving and eating a varied diet, their muscles are denser. If you take a massive 5-year-old trophy boar that's been living on acorns and adrenaline, yeah, he might be a bit fragrant and tough. Most hunters prefer the smaller ones, around 100 to 150 pounds, for the kitchen. The first step is getting that meat on ice as fast as possible. Heat is the enemy of flavor. Once you get it cooled down and butchered out, you've got a freezer full of roasts, hams, and backstraps that are pure gold. Wild hog backstrap, seared in a cast-iron skillet with some butter and garlic, is a meal fit for a king. Because they spend their lives rooting for pecans, peanuts, and corn, that diet infuses the meat with a nutty richness. And for the tougher cuts, that's what the slow cooker and the smoker were invented for. A wild hog shoulder, smoked low and slow over hickory for 12 hours, will fall apart if you even look at it funny. It makes the best pulled pork sandwiches you've ever had in your life. Beyond the taste, there's a sense of satisfaction in field-to-fork eating. You aren't just eating, you're completing the cycle. You protected the crops, you managed the population, and now you're feeding your family with high-quality protein that didn't come from a factory farm. It turns a destructive animal into a valuable resource, proving that even a monster has a silver lining if you've got a sharp knife and a good recipe. But even with a full freezer and a successful season, the battle is far from over. We are living in a new reality where man and beast are constantly clashing over the land we use to feed the world. It's a gritty, muddy, and often exhausting struggle. But it's also a testament to the resilience of the people who work the earth. As long as there are crops in the ground, there will be shadows in the corn. And as long as those shadows are there, hunters will be waiting with thermal scopes and a steady hand. It's a wild, high-stakes game of cat and mouse that keeps the spirit of the frontier alive in the modern world. We keep the line held, we protect the harvest, and we prepare for the next midnight patrol. Tomorrow night, the hogs will be back, and so will we. The hunt never truly ends. It just waits for the sun to go down again. What do you think? Subscribe to the channel for more thrilling content.